And you know who makes good movies is Richard Linklater.
Great segue.
Great segue.
He actually never, almost never, I guess one time he made a movie that you'd be like, that movie is a big hit. That was School of Rock.
I watched it on the airplane on the way back.
Obviously a lovely movie, but that's not really something he does. And yet he's really in that group of filmmakers over the last 30 years that we talk about all the time, from the Spike Lee, Soderbergh, Tarantino, David Fincher, like that whole crew.
Early 90s, late 80s breakouts.
Yeah, out of the Sundance, not from New York or Los Angeles. And he persists. I mean, he remains, I don't know if major filmmaker is the right way to describe him, because he's always kind of doing his own thing. He's never operating inside of Hollywood, but he's got another movie coming out. I guess technically it's already out, but only in 44 theaters, but premiering next Friday on Netflix, called Hitman, starring Glenn Powell. He pretty much makes a movie every 18 months, has really never slowed down. He has 21 movies that we'll go through as we build the Hall of Fame. So let's start with this. Amanda, do you remember the first Richard Linklater movie you saw?
I think it must be Before Sunrise, right? Because I was 9 for Dazed and Confused. And so I don't really think that made it over the transom. And then at that time, anyway, I saw Dazed and Confused many times in college with many young men.
Many men.
Who were
many,
shamed with it, buy it
you
in
think
the
50
way.
Cent has seen Dazed and Confused? You think he'd be interested in that? He might.
But yeah, Before Sunrise, I think from the Ethan Hawke awareness and the reality bites, of it all, led me to a movie about two people talking a lot in Europe. So, that's shaped my life ever since.
I thought you were going to say the Newton Boys. That led me to the Newton Boys. Do you remember your first, Chris?
Yeah, it was Slacker. So Slacker came out in 90, and I think I remember being really allured by and intimidated by the poster or the cover of the VHS. So it's like this young woman in the scene in the movie. It's a hilarious scene, but on the poster, I was just like, what is this person going to tell me when I watch this movie, when I finally work up the nerve to do it? It was like this totem of underground culture that I was like first becoming aware of in high school. So I always associate the cover of Slacker with like the album cover of Slanted and Enchanted by Pavement, where I'm like, what is this? Why am I drawn to it? And what is it going to do to me once I finally wrap my head around it? And I remember watching Slacker, had never seen anything like it in my life. Definitely did not understand 75% of it. But the 25% that I was like, oh, I think I kind of know people like this who don't want to do anything with their lives and just want to talk all day about how they're feeling and what they're thinking. And I was like, you can do that in a movie?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Turns out you can do it for a whole career. Look at you now.
Look at me now.
You did it.
That's
so
right.
influential. Mine must have been Dazed and Confused. I would have been 11 when it came out. I definitely didn't see it in a movie theater. I think I saw it on VHS from Blockbuster. It had the smiley face cover and the title, which I think probably appealed to my mom. And that's why she let me rent it, because she was like, oh, this is a movie about my life, which I guess in some ways it is. And that movie, we did a rewatch on it a long time ago, but that movie is a 6-star classic. It's like it is better than 5 stars.
Did you just invent 6 stars?
I did right here. It's so influential on my taste and on my like expectations of what movies like that are. And actually, in some ways, you could see that Linklater is like still weirdly kind of chasing that movie. Even like a lot of his contemporary dramedies feel like they're trying to get back to that thing, which is interesting because that's a movie about trying to get back to something. I love that movie very much. Definitely got me hooked on his stuff. I too watched Slacker at like 12 years old and was like, what is this? I couldn't make hide nor hair of it. Like
Bill watched it and was like, this guy has a lot of things to say about the Kennedy assassination. And I'm digging it.
That part actually is maybe the most scrutable part of the whole movie. But then the Sunrise, Sunset movies were pretty significant. Sunset is an all-time movie for my wife and I, as I'm sure it is for many couples that are in our age bracket. How would you describe his filmmaking style?
It is character and like word driven, and at the same time experimenting with form, particularly with time. So it's like big time feelings. It's to me in a lot of ways like technically Linklater is not Gen X, but when
he's
I just
63.
think of Gen X feelings and how I learned about a lot of them, it's through all these dudes, just hanging out in bars, talking about, the baseball teams that they used to play for.
That is literally the dream.
Yeah. And then, and like sorting through their feelings with more words than I associate with most other men in movies.
That's my whole thesis on him, is that he's the real Bull Durham. Like, he's the jock poet for real.
Yeah.
Like, he actually is genuinely curious about the arc of time and how it impacts our emotional lives, and cannot get over it, and is constantly thinking about it. And you could see when he was 17 that this is something he considered even when he was, the starting quarterback on his high school football team.
Yeah.
How would you describe his filmmaking style?
Well, it's visually, I find it to be pretty invisible. Like, I find him curious and present and inquisitive and comfortable being kind of like, the camera is here to watch human behavior take place and to capture moments that even in his quote unquote Hollywood movies or genre movies, like, it's like, what can I get out of this that is unexpectedly real and true? So even something like Newton Boys or whatever, he's going to like wait and try and find the like part of humanity. I think he does that really well in Hitman, like where he's going to like squeeze out some weird, very true moment from these characters, which I always really appreciate. I don't necessarily, when I close my eyes and I think of the definitive like Linklater set piece or scene or shot, like, there's obviously moments in Dazed and Confused that come to mind, but I don't think of him as an overly didactic visual storyteller. I will say that I think he might be the voice, if not, it's not really my generation, but the voice of a generation.
Yes.
And has continued to make movies that feel deeply connected to the way he sees the world and the way he's engaging with the world. And whether that's politically or it has to do with being a parent or being a child or being somebody who is lost in their own nostalgia or uncertain about their future. Every couple of movies, you feel like he's kind of like planting a mile marker to be like, all right, here's where I'm at now, and it's been fascinating to go from Slacker and Dazed and Suburbia, honestly, and Before Sunrise, where you're like, okay, like this is the voice of like this young, wandering, despondent, kind of alienated person, to all the way through Boyhood and Everybody Wants Some, kind of having this more like, I need to go back and fix certain things, but also celebrate certain things. And I think that's an incredible project for a filmmaker and maybe unique among all working filmmakers, with the exception of like Spielberg. Like, I mean, of somebody who's like, and he's more through genre, but like, who else goes and like comments on their own lived experience and autobiography with this frequency, with this kind of fanfare?
Yeah. I mean, there are some, but they often do it in much more oblique ways.
Yeah.
I think the things that, like, Wes Anderson is clearly doing that.
Right.
But he's just doing it through the prism of different kinds of stories or different kinds of influences and time periods. I think he has that very Texas matter-of-factness to what he's doing that makes it seem like very accessible. Like, he's also, like, he obviously is well known for being a staple of Austin, but he was born in Houston. You know what I mean? He was raised in Huntsville.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a very direct communicator. So he's like, here's a movie about when I was in college playing baseball. And yet that movie is just like magically transporting and deeply relatable and really considered and philosophical.
Yeah.
He's very philosophical in all of these movies, trying to better understand why things are the way that they are and maybe how they could have been. I think part of the reason that he's able to do what Chris is describing is because he's always just making movies on his terms. He's never like, I should probably go make Transformers 6 just in case, like I got to backstop whatever I'm interested in. Like, he really never does that. I guess he remade Bad News Bears and he made School of Rock, but even those movies, he's poured a lot of himself and his own ideas and interests into those movies. And those are really like as kind of commercial as he gets. Even a movie like Hitman, which, you call your movie Hitman and you're expecting a certain kind of a thing. Like, the whole movie is about upending and subverting our expectations of a movie
just
about
like
that.
Bernie, like he's
So I think it's because maybe he's able to keep things at a modest scale on a regular basis that they can always feel like him. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, he is, very famously set up shop in Texas, like has a whole compound, is like, leave me alone. I'm going to do things on a low budget and with my own funding or, with cobbled together without a studio, so you can't tell me what to do. And I will film something for 13 years over the span of like a weekend, like I'm going to camp in the case of Boyhood. Or again, he's doing it again with Merrily We Roll Along. So with Paul Mescal. So it has just a real the same vibe that are like in his character, speaking of autobiography, which is like, I'm just doing my thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm going to figure it out. And like a little bit of a loner, but still interested in other people and wants to set his own vibe and also manages to put all of that in the movies that he makes because there aren't that many other people except for this troupe of actors and, you know, collaborators that he works with time and time and time again. So there is just kind of a whole little Linklater universe
Mm-hmm.
that no matter what kind of genre he's doing and whether it is another, you know, School of Dazed and Confused or a Hitman, it's like, oh, I'm in a Linklater movie right now. These people are all talking to me in that like certainly direct way. And I want to spend more time here, but it's like a little off kilter
Mm-hmm.
in just a very specific, I mean, it's very personal filmmaking.